Good morning, everybody. We'll just get started in a moment. Good morning, everybody, and thank you for joining us this morning on our webinar where we're talking about understanding what users need and not what they think they need. So just some housekeeping rules first, just to say that the session is being recorded and it will be available on demand afterwards. So you will be sent a link, and also it will be on the Hart website. So please do feel free to share this with any of your colleagues. You'll see there is a Q&A box, and that's for any questions that you have for Kath. We really want this to be as interactive as possible, so please do put in questions throughout and we will cover off as many of them as we can. And then also you see there's a chat box, and that's really for any more sort of general support questions, any technical questions. And my colleague Rebecca is in the background and she's keeping an eye on those. So I'm Joyce Harman and I'm Senior Client Relationship Manager at Hart, and I'm absolutely delighted to be joined this morning by Kath. Kath, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yes, hello everybody, good morning. I'm Kath and I'm the Chief Executive of British Mensa.
Fantastic, thanks Kath. And we'll be talking to Kath in a lot more detail later, and also she can tell you about their amazing new website which went live yesterday. So we're even more appreciative of Kath joining us today, having had to go live yesterday. So really just quickly, for those of you who are not aware of Hart Square, just to say that we are a consultancy practice that we work only in the not-for-profit sector. So when we were thinking about this topic, one of the kind of the key questions, and I also know that Kath definitely has some good views on kind of even the title of the topic for today, but we were thinking about, how do you truly cater for the needs of the users without derailing either your timeline for change, the things that you need, strategic things you need to do as an organization. How can you meet those needs, but without disrupting what you must do as an organization, how you must deliver business as usual. So that was kind of front in mind when thinking about this, because very often there's a difference between what users need or what they think they need versus the reality of running an organization and delivering it for internally as well as externally to your members or your donors or supporters or whatever they may be, depending on your type of organization. So I wanted to run just a quick poll, and this is really just to give us an idea of who's with us this morning and sort of what stage you're at. So bear with me while I just put this up. So what the poll question is asking is, sort of what sort of stage are you at in reviewing your needs of your users? So is it that you're generally trying to find out a bit more information, you're not really sure where to start, you're not really sure what to do, you're about to start doing this, you're currently in the middle of it, you're reviewing those needs, or you've done that and you're not really sure where to go next, or could it be something else? If there's another, also put that into the chat box as well, so we have an idea of that. So I'm just going to let that run for another second or two, and let me just end the poll and I'll share those results. So it's very much split, I would say, between generally seeking more information or about to start a review of your user needs, and then with some people that are sort of currently doing it. So that's quite interesting, and hopefully then this sort of will be a useful session for those people that fall within those groups. So if I just stop sharing those. So what do we mean by users? And this is from a very, really high level. I've kind of grouped, you can think of it as two groups. So you've got your internal users. So they are your staff, your volunteers, it could be the board. This is by no means the exhaustive list. But when you're thinking about internal, it's the doers, it's the people that are keeping your organization going, that are keeping the lights on, keeping everything running, making sure that all your, all in comms is going out to members, that all of the work that needs to be done is done, that the campaigns are running, all of that kind of thing. So the internal staff, the internal people that are, making sure as an organization you run. Then from the external side, this could be, and again, it'll depend on the type of organization you are, either your members or donors, various different stakeholders, volunteers, customers. Again, this will very much depend on, who you are and what it is that you do. So being very clear right at the start of when you're embarking on a sort of a journey of thinking about user needs, that you could absolutely be looking at both groups, internal and external, but that it's very important that you're clear in your mind what the needs are for which group, and not in any way mixing them up, because they can be very, very different. So being very clear, am I talking about internal users here, or am I talking about external users? One of the important points I would say is around doing anything about identifying user needs, regardless of internal or external, is that you must have a baseline, because in order to be able to do any kind of a comparison to see what it is you actually need in reality, you need to know sort of where you're starting from. So from an internal point of view, it could, some of the things that are worth thinking about is identifying, where there's an awful lot of manual processes, where automation could be brought in, get an understanding of, of what's working currently, what's not working, where there could be improvements. Thinking about doing a business process assessment, and just, I suppose, a quick point on that, because we do often get asked the difference between a business process assessment versus a business process review. So a business process review is much more when it's a very detailed, it's a very in-depth piece of work. This is where you're mapping all of the various different processes, you're doing swim lane diagrams, you're doing lots of different flow charts. It's a very, very involved piece of work. It's a very good piece of work and a very strategic piece of work. But when you're thinking about from a baseline point of view, very often just doing a simplified version of a business process assessment, which one of my colleagues kind of calls a helicopter view of your processes. And really what you're looking to do there is identify what processes have you got within different teams or different departments, understanding, documenting what the processes are, who owns those processes, when was the last time those processes were reviewed. Because often what you can find out is that sometimes these processes haven't been reviewed for a very, very long time, and that there's definitely some quick wins and things that can be done around those processes. So getting that baseline around your processes. Then equally looking at the systems and tools that are in place. Again, you'd be amazed, and I'm often still amazed with working with some clients where they really don't have a full understanding of all the bits of kit, for want of a better word, that they have. So a very simple exercise around actually document it, sitting down and talking to the different teams to go, what tools are you using? As an example, there's a client I was working with recently, and we uncovered that they had 5 different survey tools, because over various pieces of work that they wanted to do, surveys that they wanted to do, that what had happened is different people had gone out and had downloaded a free survey tool, and so they'd ended up with all these different survey tools. Not everybody aware that they had them. So what they end up doing is having this big technical debt of lots of different systems, lots of different tools that, yes, although some of them are free, but again, they're still on your system, they still have to be managed, they still have to be looked at, which then comes on to the point about data, because from a baseline point of view, you need to understand where all your data is, how all your data is being used. So in that, the example of having lots and lots of different survey tools, that their data was being held in 5 different survey systems. Questions about the type of data that was in there, was there any risks around security or GDPR? So very important to think about where this is held, how you're managing, and what you're using. So as a baseline, so where you're starting from, to kind of start thinking about what's needed, but also understanding what's not working. From the external side of things, as I say, carrying out surveys, you can, to understand what people need, you can carry out surveys. You can do a lot of work around user, journey maps, stakeholder journey maps, and developing personas. And that's a really good way of getting a much more in-depth kind of perception of the people that you're interacting with, how they interact with you. We did actually do a session on this last week, which is available on demand, which goes into an awful lot more detail on developing journey maps and personas. So I'm not going to go into that in detail, but as I say, that's available from last week's webinar. But also you can use an awful lot of analytical tools. Now there's many different analytical tools in the market. One of the things, and it's often an interesting conversation, is around, to understand user needs, is developing of forums. But one of the things I would definitely say, forums are a great tool, particularly around your members and your different stakeholders. But one of the things I would say is that if you're considering using forums, you need to make sure that they're managed. You need to start thinking about, are they going to be, is there going to be a sort of a gatekeeper on them, or is it that anybody can just put anything on they want there and then that gets published? So one of the things when using that kind of a tool is around making sure, are you going to be able to cope and manage the level of interaction you might get, or do you want to put any kind of gatekeeping on it? So thinking about the external tools that you could be using to deal with those external groups is, how is it going to work? How are you going to deal with the information that comes back in or not? Then thinking, and this is really more thinking about really more internally. So if you're thinking about a technology project, and it's around thinking about the requirements, because the requirements is the true understanding. So you've kind of done your baseline to figure out where things are, but that's then building on that. So thinking about requirements gathering, where to start, which is always one of the questions, it is reaching out to the whole organization. And this is kind of regardless of what size of organization you are, that you need to make sure that you have had interaction with the various different teams and departments. Now, this is not to say in a bigger organization that you're going to sit down and talk to everybody, because that's not practical, but you need to make sure you've got good representation. It is about uncovering what's working and what's not working. But really importantly, it's about not allowing just endless wish lists, because people will be very good about talking about what they want, but it needs to be not just the voice of the loudest person gets what they want. Things need to be, done based on strategic needs. So the requirements gathering, it really is much of a collaborative, but it's an investigative process. You'd be amazed what can come out when you're having these conversations with staff about what they need, what's working, what's not working. And very often, just by getting some people in the room together, it's amazing what comes out about understanding about, X person does it this way, I didn't realize that. And then, you can already start seeing where things can change and things can be improved. But the important part about that, bringing everybody together, is getting staff buy-in, so that they take ownership for the project. They feel that they're involved, they feel that they're being heard. But again, with the sorting out the priorities, and I know that Kath will definitely have a lot to say around this, is that what people say they want, and the requirements, that they're going to be great, they're going to be varied, but you have to keep the needs and objectives of the organisation as a key focus. You need to make those strategic decisions about what is practical, what can you do now, what can be done in the timeline that you have, what can be done with the resources that you have, what can be done with the budgets that you have. So it's very important to go through this process, but making sure at the end of it that you have prioritization. You can't deliver everything that you want, or if you do want to, have you got the budget to do that? How long is it going to take in reality? And then just finally on this, before I bring Kath in, one of the points is really, and this is just some examples, is that once you've kind of gone through the exercise of identifying what users are saying their need, is getting agreement on what those needs are. What are the benefits going to be of all of this change? What are the benefits going to be for doing all of this work and all of that? So for example, it might be you're going to take away an awful lot of manual processes, therefore it's going to save an awful lot of time. It might be that one of the frustrations was that you're running different events and campaigns, you can't do proper analysis to see how successful they've been or not, that now you'll be able to do that. Maybe thinking about that point about data. Where is your data living? Have you got personalized data in spreadsheets? So therefore removing that risk that you might have around security or GDPR. Having data and systems integrated that staff can then easily self-serve. They can easily access data, do the work and reports that they need. But also importantly, that maybe so you can say data can be trusted. One of the often things that comes out about what talking about user needs is data's all over the place, and we can't trust that the data and the stats that we have are accurate. So these are really just some of the kind of high level benefits that could come off the part of the project. So I'm now going to bring in Kath, because enough for me, because I know everybody's died to hear from Kath, and I know I am. So Kath, tell us a bit about yourself and British Mensa.
Okie doke, lovely to be here. So I have been with British Mensa since the beginning of February last year, 2021. And I joined in order to deliver, and this is the key line in the recruitment pack, to lead the transformation of Mensa into a successful 21st century organisation which meets its objectives and grows year on year. So not to deliver business as usual and to continue just keeping the wheels turning, but actually to pretty much fix the whole bus. And Mensa has been going since 1946, and its objectives, which were developed in 1946, were to provide a stimulating intellectual and social environment for its members, which we do very well, but to identify and foster human intelligence for the benefit of humanity, and also to encourage research into the nature, characteristics and uses of intelligence, both of which I think we need to improve on, and that needs to be something that becomes more central to what we're for, shall we say. So when I came into British Mensa almost 2 years ago, I was charged with making a lot of change and looking at every aspect. I remember Mensa from when I was a youngster. I can even remember Mensa being on Blue Peter. So that just goes to show how long ago that was. And the brand is still really, really well known. But in fact, its membership, particularly in the UK, has been going down for the last 20 years. And we really need to turn the tide on that, make it more relevant for a wider audience, start marketing more strongly. But in order to do that, we needed to get our house in order first. And the first year of the new 3-year strategy is called Getting Our House in Order. So it's all about systems and processes and governance and making sure that when we press the button to really start marketing much more effectively externally, that when people come in, we've got everything ready for them. And that's been the purpose of the project that we've done, that actually launched yesterday, which is why I'm looking a little bit fraught. No, that's a joke, actually. It was handled very well, and it's gone very, very smoothly. So my background is for the 9 years before I joined British Mensa, I was working for the Chartered Institute of Procurement and Supply. And there I was the director responsible for all things external. So marketing, PR, comms, digital events, membership for a while there as well. And so I had quite a strong membership background and really an understanding of the different levers that you could pull or push to try and turn the tide. And in fact, we are doing all of them all at the same time, which is kind of madness. But if you look at prioritization, they all need to be done. So we thought, well, we might as well get on with it.
Yeah, I like that you just to get on with all of it. And I love that, because it really is, you are doing a huge amount. I mean, it really cannot be underestimated, the amount of change and the amount of things that you've been working on over the last 2 years. So from that, as we said, you're in the middle of the new website yesterday, but you're also doing the CRM as well. So I suppose, can you tell us a little bit about that, that project itself? What was it? You've sort of outlined a bit of it already, but what was it you were setting out to do, and those drivers for change around thinking about the systems?
Well, absolutely. I mean, I think we're doing the CRM CMS website right now. That's yesterday's launch. And then we're doing online communities platform in the spring. Clearly, there's going to be further releases. The website is minimum viable product. We've got additional work to do, but in terms of time, scope, budget, the key metric that we couldn't move on was time, insofar as we didn't really want to be moving into the next year, because we'd have to pay for another load of licenses. So let's get it live, let's build on the base platform from now, was our view. And so the scope is slightly smaller than we would have wanted as a full all singing, all dancing version, but it's good enough. It's better than what we had before, and actually we can iterate over time. But we're also doing new magazine launch next year, new digital marketing approach next year, new digital comms, all starting in January. We've done a complete governance review. We've got new memorandum and articles of association that's just been signed off at our AGM, new board regulations, etc., etc. We've been implementing GDPR, health and safety, data security. There's just huge amounts of things that have also sat alongside the launch of this project. And having been involved in projects like this in the past and known some of the challenges around them, and knowing also that we didn't have a huge amount of resource. I mean, I've brought in some new members of the team this year who've been working alongside the existing staff members to really help to drive this project forward. But we're a very small team, and we needed some professional support. So I kind of decided that what we really needed was a friend to sit alongside us, and that friend, in fact, was Hart Square, who I'd come across before my previous role, but not used. So let's just say that I started off perhaps in the shoes of some of the people that are watching this webinar by watching lots of your webinars, by taking lots and lots of notes, understanding some of the stages that we needed to follow, and then actually, particularly with regards to the requirements gathering, using one of your consultants to help us to do that. Because I'm not sure, at that time, I didn't have my new head of IT and operations or my head of communications, marketing and events. I was just kind of me. And I thought, well, I don't know enough, and I don't have enough bandwidth to do this by myself. So let's bring in some people who do. And that exercise was very, very useful in terms of diving into what we actually need. Because I think, you know, in terms of the title of the presentation, your subtitle was fine, by the way, but your actual title is slightly the wrong way around, because, you know, what users need is actually what they think they need is actually not what they need.
Absolutely.
And we need to move away from a focus on the input to a focus, even not output, but to outcome. What is it we need to try to deliver for our users, particularly our members? And how do we do that most effectively without replicating perhaps some of the systems and therefore issues of the past? Just as an aside, you know, we've been going since 1946. We've got members of about just under 18,000 members in the UK, and those members range from 3 to 103. Just think about it in terms of your user personas. You know, there's not very many organisations that would have a challenge of that breadth. We've also got more members between the ages of 65 and 85 than we have under 35. And over the last 2 years, that gap has grown. So again, think about your user needs and your user personas. We have a lot of members who've been with us for a very long time and who are used to their interaction with Mensa taking place in a particular way. But in terms of strategic drift, the world has moved on. The external environment has changed. The laws have changed, you know, particularly around data protection, copyright, so on and so forth. And Mensa has not kept it up with that. So we've needed to, you know, make a massive step very, very quickly. And this is not quite as good as you can't be what you can't see, but you can't deliver what you haven't ever experienced. So, you know, actually understanding what is available out there and what best practice looks like, and the fact that although Mensa has, you know, its own individuality, it is a membership organisation, and a lot of what we do is what a lot of the viewers here are doing, or indeed lots of other organisations. So understanding what it is we're trying to achieve and why, and what would be the best way of doing that. An example being, we were not GDPR compliant. When I arrived and I asked to understand the membership and the demographics and I was actually given the list, and data was being shared, which, you know, some of you will be raising your hands up going, oh my goodness. You know, the law is the law, and we have to make sure that we are compliant with that. But, you know, so a volunteer saying to me, I need to be able to contact new members arriving in my region, fine. But we don't have to do that by necessarily sharing the data. So, you know, finding out what we're actually trying to achieve and the best way of doing it. And that's, you know, that's something that came out of the requirements gathering. And it also then came out of the supplier selection and asking for best practice around certain areas that were important to us. You know, if we don't know it ourselves, somebody will know what the best way to do something is.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that expression, you can't be what you can't see. I think that's really good. I really like that.
Yeah, we need to think of a new version of that, though. Like, you can't implement what you don't know about. It's not at all catchy. Think about it. You could own that, Joyce.
I will, absolutely. I like that. As you've already said, the numerous amount of projects that you're doing, and you are a really small organization, particularly, comparative to the amount of work that you're doing. So how important was it for you to understand the internal user needs, to help bring in those efficiencies, but also, you're a small team.
Well, we're a small team, and we're a team that's been in place for quite a long time. And again, potentially not knowing what else is out there that we could implement. Do you know what I mean? So it's a very similar challenge. And again, sort of understanding what all the key processes are or the key outputs are that we need to deliver, but not being beholden to this is how it's always been done. By then showing what the opportunity is, what the capability of the new systems are, and actually getting that kind of eureka moment of, gosh, this is going to make life a heck of a lot easier, So very much understanding what the absolute must-have outcomes are, what the deliverables are, and then porting those to what current modern systems can actually deliver. Because to your point around, MI and, reducing risk and all of those things, they were all absolutely key. Now, our systems have served us well over many, many years, but we don't have a single view of a customer. We don't have data in one place. We can't match one set of data to another set of data. So if my board says to me, well, Kath, answer this question, about how a percentage of members who've been with us for X amount of time or whatever, I have to just go, we can't do it. We do not have the kind of data management information that will actually allow us to make effective decisions. Now, when you're going through such a macro change, it's not quite so important insofar as the big change has to happen, so you might as well just get on with it. But as you're starting to refine over time, then you need that granular data to be able to look at where the smaller fixes that can make quite a lot of difference should take place, and we certainly don't have that right now. So what we really wanted was that sort of streamlined, digital first, single view of the customer, all the stuff that's really, it's not rocket science. It's what a lot of organizations have either implemented or are looking to implement. We're no different to anybody else.
Yeah, no, and I suppose then thinking about, because obviously you've been doing the CRM and the website and the portal. I know you mentioned about doing the requirements gathering. We'll talk about that in a bit more in a minute. But did you carry out sort of any more internal research, or I suppose external research, thinking about research out to the members? Did you do that? And if you didn't, is that something you would change in hindsight, or just kind of thinking about that sort of external research?
Well, we did a big piece of member research back in May 2021, I think, or perhaps it was April. So that was one of my first things when I joined, was a big all-member survey, which was delivered for us by Think, and it was extremely useful, actually. I don't know that Mensa had done anything on that scale before, certainly not in a long time. We had about 11%, I think, completed it, which was pretty good. I think anything over about 9 or 10 is good. And it was very, very useful as a roadmap, to give us a roadmap for change. But equally, I'll tell you what was particularly useful in that case was the ability to benchmark us against other membership organisations. And that was done because obviously Think have their annual survey of membership organisations. So we were able to look at where we were performing versus other consumer membership organisations and other professional membership organisations, which of course are different, but we were able to look at both. And and that was very, very valuable insofar as some of the stats as raw data would have looked quite good. And you think, oh, yeah, that's quite good. We're doing all right there. And then you look at where we stand versus other similar organisations, and you realise actually, there was room for improvement, shall we say. So so that certainly was the baseline of the roadmap for change. We've done another little top up of that recently, as we go into relaunching the magazine and relaunching our digital communications, and starting to look at being able to serve content that is based on your own location and your own interests and so on and so forth, because we've not been able to do any segmentation before. And I think it's really important to do that. And as part of the requirements gathering, we did actually have a session with some of our key volunteers. So we've got sort of 3 key large groups of volunteers: regional officers, regional editors for the regional newsletters, and also SIG secretaries, special interest group secretaries. And we had a session on the requirements gathering that included representatives of those 3 groups. And again, trying to dive into not what we do now, but what is it we're trying to achieve. And therefore we can look at what the best practice of the systems that we were going to be looking at in supply selection would be able to deliver. And that was quite interesting, actually, because in fact, there's one of your other questions, but I shall preempt it, which was around the communities platform, because we had, when I arrived, as I say, we used to share data with our volunteers. So whether you're a regional officer or a SIG-Sec or we would be actually sending you lists of people's names and contact details, which obviously you can't do. And having to be able to facilitate the amount of member to member and volunteer to member communication, which is actually at the heart of Mensa as a social environment for people of high IQ, in a GDPR compliant way, was an absolutely key part of the requirements gathering and a key part of the procurement brief. And I didn't really know what best practice was. I had come across the communities platform piece, knew a little bit about it, knew quite a lot of membership organisations were starting to put them in for that very reason, and just basically left that as quite an open brief as part of the procurement process. Like, we need to be able to do this. Can you tell us what you have seen from other clients as to what that best practice could look like? And I'd have to say, some were actually talking about, additional licenses, giving licenses to volunteers, which would be vastly expensive, and like I said, that's what is it they say? A sledgehammer to crack a walnut. So over a number of iterations, we ended up with the communities platform piece. And that will be second release. I mean, that is something, it would have been fantastic. We could have had that go live now, but that could have been the last straw that broke the camel's back. So we start the work on that, I think, is it next week or the week after? Maybe it's the week after. Maybe we could have a little breather.
Yeah, give us a break.
And then that comes into being launched in spring.
Yeah, because I think definitely that point around the communities platform as well is there is a certain element of, again, that sort of you don't know what you don't know, and absolutely using the expertise of the technology partners that you're talking to and getting them to make suggestions, because if they're going through this process with you, they should have a good understanding of you as an organization and what it is you're trying to achieve. So being willing to kind of listen to their suggestions. It doesn't mean you have to go with those ones in the end, but at least for them to kind of come forward and make those suggestions and say, we've done this with XYZ client, we think this would be a good fit for you. So to be able to have those open and honest conversations, I suppose.
Well, I mean, you're absolutely right. And at the Digital Excellence Conference, what was that, about 6 months ago, there were a number of speakers talking about online communities, and some of the much bigger organizations than Mensa talking about their experience of starting to implement. And I think everybody's learning as they go. There's a little bit of not a struggle, but a kind of working it out as you go along, how much moderation you need, how much content needs to be delivered from the center, how do you keep things moving, how do you ensure it's not moribund, all of those kinds of things. And we have had a forum on our website previously which, you know, is quite active, but it's a very small number of people. And actually, you know, what we really need to do is make sure that there are subgroups around different special interest groups, subgroups around different locations that are starting to talk to each other and communicate on that platform. I mean, I remember doing a website project at SIP, Strategy Institute of Procurement and Supply, when I first joined in 2011. And we were talking about having this you know, communication platform, or, you know, encouraging people to communicate via our website. And the view at the time was, well, why would you do that? Because people will want to communicate through the channels they're already on, whether it be Facebook or, you know, whatever. And I think, you know, perhaps thinking has changed with the advent of GDPR, that actually you try and, instead of being happy for it to take place in an external environment, many more organizations are trying to bring it in-house. So you've got a better element of control, but also that you can use that then for official comms as well as just member-to-member comms. I don't know, maybe. The thinking seems to have come full circle in the last 10 years.
No, definitely. And it is it is an interesting sort of debate and conversation, isn't it, around even, you know, so what is a platform and what should it be, and all of those kind of things. Just coming back to thinking about requirements, and I know we sort of touched on this because you know, it's a really involved process, but I suppose the main bit for me, and that I definitely know people would be interested here, is especially because you're making some big changes, is, you know, how did you get that buy-in across the team, the organization, the board as well? But, you know, how did you agree the scope of the project? Because you were trying to do so many things. So that agreement on the scope, how did you do that? How did you manage that?
Well, as I said when I started, I came in with the brief to make this change and to transform the organization. My board have been absolutely superb. I mean, they want this change. You know, they can see that it is needed. You know, we don't really have a choice. At a Mensa at Cambridge, which is you know, one of our premier events, we had a speaker who was talking about strategic drift, which is where anybody can go Google it. There'll be a diagram there. But literally, you know, the organization has sort of carried on making small or incremental changes and thinking it's keeping up, but the external environment has changed exponentially. And there is a gap, you know, at that gap, it is transform, or most of the diagrams will say transform or die. You know, you literally have to make that change. Yeah. And my board are completely aware of that and are completely up for that. So that's absolutely brilliant. You know, not everybody has that level of support. You know, so I know I'm blessed, but that's why they recruited me, and that's what they wanted me to do. So, you know, that's fantastic. With the internal staff, you know, we've been really, really open all the way through the project about the need for change. You know, there is that strategic drift thing, but also our research that took place back in spring 21 showed that, again, you know, we had a burning platform. We have to change. And we did net promoter score. Our net promoter score was negative. That's not a good sign. Yeah. Our net promoter score for members of under 5 years tenure was very, very low. But even the net promoter score for members of more than 20 years tenure was still negative. So, you know, a negative net promoter score is, again, an indicator that you're on the slippery slope. So I think there's a huge amount of evidence of the change that was required, and you know, all the way through, the staff have been kept involved and informed of what we're doing and why we're doing it. You know, it's always difficult. Nobody likes change. No. I don't think there's one person in the world who really likes change. Most people might say, some people might say that they do like change, but they tend to be the ones who are instigating it. And if it's in your hands, it's a very different matter. But when change is something that's being done to you, or that it's not the decision that you've made, it is really, really uncomfortable. So until you see the results and the fact that quite often, the majority of the time, in fact, it's better. And that's what we're hoping to get to. I haven't logged on this morning to see how our new site has landed, Joyce, but it'll be, some people will love it and some people won't. And I think you've got to have the courage of your convictions when you're doing a project like this, that you're doing the right thing, you are doing it for the right reasons, and you are trying to improve the results for all, not just listening to, you know, some voices, a few voices.
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree. And I know, Kath, you and I have definitely had this conversation before, that you can't please everybody, because that's just human nature. You know, it doesn't matter what type of organization you're, it's the same in your personal life. You just can't always please everybody. But it's that conviction of, you know, that you're doing the best that you can and sticking with it, because, you know, it really can't be underestimated. You know, you've been very lucky, as you say, with the support of the board, but you have really driven this through. And you have to have the courage of your convictions, because a lot of other people might have given up halfway through. So it's that mindset of, you've just got to drive through because you believe in it. And I think, and also that you're amazing at doing that. You have kind of touched on this already, but it was thinking about, you know, particularly the website. And you've talked about your different sort of the member categories and where some numbers have been going down and things like that. But were you really, for sort of thinking about the MVP, I suppose, that minimal viable product, the initial go live, were you focusing just really more on current members, or was it very much, but we know we need to be thinking about where we can bring in new members? Or was, you know, was there a kind of a baseline of, this is what we're going to go live with, and then we're going to be thinking about, you know, the attracting newer members? So it's a very long question. I hope it makes sense.
Well, it was MVP for both, really, I think. You know, what you've seen, obviously, is the new public website.
Yeah.
You know, so there's also a new member portal. And then obviously there's a new CRM. So the way of operating within the system and people's self-service opportunities and so on and so forth have all changed. Then the back end, we are being able to use the data to improve the member experience for each individual member. So there's a lot in terms of for example, the external website. We haven't got the intelligence hub area, which is going to be the go-to place for all things intelligence related for members and non-members and anybody to look at and to find out whatever they want to find out. For example, you know, support for children who have got high intelligence and you know, just curated information in the main. Ultimately, there'll be lots of Mensa generated content, but in fact, to start off with, it'd be predominantly curated content. We don't have that because we didn't have the content available. Like, well, you know, we haven't had that before. We don't need it for day one. We can start to implement that early next year. And also with the new publishing and digital content partnership that starts with Think in the new year, then we will be driving content from that. So, you know, so that was fine. We could park that. And there are a number of areas where we can improve, but we haven't lost anything. That was the key thing. And what we have done is simplified the front end. There's far fewer pages. It's far more streamlined. It's very clear the journey that you need to take. There is a clear funnel towards membership, which we didn't have before. So, you know, I'm very pleased, very clean. That's fine. We can build on that. Again, from a member perspective, we've not wanted to take anything away, but we have wanted to be able to start with, you know, similar level of product and then build it up. So, you know, that personalization, the serving of relevant content on an individual by individual basis, that's not going to start until the new year. But you know, the platform is there and it's ready to go. So yes, we are looking at keeping our current members on board and improving their member experience, and then also improving the relevance so that we can drive new membership, because membership growth is a key metric for me, and it's it's turning a very, very large ship. We've been going down for pretty much every month for the last 20 years. So but I'm absolutely convinced that it can be turned.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
or I wouldn't be doing it. So
no, well, exactly. You wouldn't take on the challenge otherwise, Kath, would you? Absolutely not.
No.
I think it just kind of conscious of time, and we've lots of questions coming in. When you were choosing the technology partners, how important was it that they could demonstrate to you, sort of that the value and the engagement that they could bring, externally, to the members, but also, sort of thinking about internally as well. How important was that as part of your kind of choosing, the ultimate partner you went with?
It was very, very important. I mean, that culture fit piece is super important, as well as the technology. I mean, we had we worked with Hart to come up with the short list of suppliers and to sit alongside us during the procurement process. I mean, clearly, having spent 9 years with the Chartered Institute of Procurement and Supply, I'm quite big on procurement processes and also the importance, because this is a huge project for any membership organisation, whatever scale. It underpins everything you do. You don't want to get it wrong. So we worked with Hart, and I would have to say that we had a really, really good shortlist of 4. We could have gone with any one of them, actually, and that's a really good place to find yourself in, where it's there's no clear organizations that you think, oh gosh, no, can't touch that, whatever. They were all really, really good, and they all brought something different to the party. I think from my perspective, what I really liked was taking references from other membership organizations that had used the systems, and in fact also doing those by telephone, and really getting the warts and all view. I thought was very good, because sometimes you think, I've had this particular experience during the meetings, and they were all on Zoom, so it's not quite as good, I don't think, as being in the room and literally seeing the whites of people's eyes. But then to have that sort of warts and all view of of the various options and the various suppliers was really useful, and I would hope it's very, very valuable when our counterparts are very honest, and I will do the same, because I'm sure I'll be asked to provide references moving forward. But all in all, I'm not sure that the team back at the office will agree with this today, because I know that there was a lot of work going on late into last night. Thank you. But it has not been as stressful a project as others that I have had in the past. Let's just say that.
Yeah.
So I think doing it properly, having a friend alongside to help with that, to make sure that we're not missing anything, to make sure that there's a lot of paperwork involved, if nothing else. When you're a very, very small team, I tell you what, having somebody else to do all of that for you is a marvel. But also, we have continued our relationship with you guys. We have kept one of your senior team alongside us as a sort of critical friend for our internal PM, to give them an opportunity to vent in a confidential environment, and to have some experienced support. That's been really useful, I know, very much valued. And also, we've very, very late in the day thought we could do with a bit of additional help on UAT, and brought in some of your people at very short notice. So that's been really, really useful, because it's good to have that safety valve when you're with a very small team who are having to keep the day job going. This not that we haven't got anybody that's only dedicated to this project, and I know you usually recommend that you do, but we have the luxury of that with such a small team. But just knowing that you could press the button or pick up a phone has been quite a relief, even if you don't need to use it.
No, but no, thank you, Kath. That's very kind of you, and it's good to hear that that support has been useful. And but exactly to your point, you don't have people sitting around with nothing to do. Everybody's doing many, many, many jobs, so you know they don't have the luxury of just focusing on the project. So then finally, any sort of top tips, take home advice you would give to any other organisations, anyone joining us today that are thinking about embarking on, you know, trying to understand what it is they need to do? Any key takeaways?
Well, I think do a big piece of member research and understand the environment that you're operating in, and you know, get that mandate for change through hearing that from the mouths of the members or your board or your volunteers, is really a good place to start. You need to have the courage of your convictions, because what we are doing and what you would be doing is what lots of organizations are doing. You know, we're not making it up as we go along and think, oh, that might be a nice idea. No, everybody's doing it, because we all need systems that allow us to have that digital first, streamlined and MI, and, you know, it's across the board. Have the courage of your convictions and know that you are doing the right thing for the right reason. You will get pushback, you will get members not understanding perhaps, or not liking the idea of change, or being perfectly happy with the world they live in right now, but they don't necessarily understand the compliance environment, the external environment, and the risk that you're trying to manage for the organization. And why would they? They don't operate in the membership services world or whatever. You know, they are interested in their own member experience, and provided you know that ultimately you are going to be providing a better member experience, then you know that you're doing the right thing. You've got to hold your nerve, keep going.
Yeah, I like that. Hold your nerve and keep going. Absolutely. I'm just really conscious of time, so unfortunately we won't get through all of the questions, but we can definitely follow up on any of them afterwards. One question that has come in, Kath, on the chat is just interesting to see sort of you in this. You touched a bit on this about sort of, you know, the complete difference in the sort of level of people and demographics that you work with. So the question was, we have a massive digital divide amongst our user base, which is visually impaired people, and cover ages from 6 to 96. How would you suggest handling user views among such a disparate set? Any thinking on that? I know that you could probably talk about that one all day, but sort of any sort of initial thinking on that one?
Yeah, no, I mean, gosh, well, there we are. That's told me that actually we're not that unusual. I mean, I think, you know, by saying digital first, you know, we're going to have a number of our members who are not going to like that change, you know, and we want to be able to continue in the main to be able to provide the service that's required from people who don't necessarily want to be digital first. So this comes back to new versus existing, to your question earlier. You know, we would expect that all new members will be completely digital first, and that's how they will be serviced, and that's how it's going to work. But, you know, for some of our longer serving members, the members that have been with us for a long time, who are used to having some non-digital interaction, you know, we will need to continue to deliver some of that. We have already moved from having regional newsletters printed, SIG newsletters printed. They are all digital first already. So that's not happening as a result of this project. That's already happened. But you know, there are some communications that still go out in print. So I think, you know, I'm not sure that I'm specifically answering the question that's been asked, and I'm quite happy to have an offline conversation and discussion around that. But you know, you can immediately segment by existing versus new and start to put in a completely different process and level of support for new members coming in, because their expectations will not be coloured by 20 or 30 years of experience of the organisation in the past. You know, again, you have to know that you can't You can't please everyone, but you've got to try and please the biggest majority. When we start having conversations and we're talking about, a very small number of people, very small group that might be being, having some not so positive feedback, I kind of go, let's think about the 18,000. We've got to keep thinking about the majority, and we've also got to think about the new. Otherwise we have no future. So it's kind of taking on board all of the voices, but focusing our efforts where we can make the biggest amount of change and have the biggest effect.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you, Kath. I'm very conscious of time because of doing my project manager head. I need to make sure that we keep on time. So sadly that we didn't get to go through all of the questions, but if there's any that you do want to follow up, and I'm sure, as Kath has very kindly said, she'd be very happy to, to follow up and have those conversations.
Yeah, I'm very easy to find, so kath@mensa.org.uk, or LinkedIn. Give me a shout if you want to follow up on anything. More than happy to do so.
Thank you, Kath. I really appreciate that. And I know that people will be really, really grateful. And I definitely recommend, even though Kath hasn't had full time yet because she's been very busy with go lives and many things, is go and look at the new website, because it is great. And I'm not just saying because it is absolutely fantastic. And some of you won't have seen the previous one, but it is just, I love it. I absolutely love it. I was having a great look at it this morning. So I would recommend everybody to kind of go and look and, see what, as Kath says, it is the first phase. There will be more to come, but definitely to have a look at. So just to finish up, just to say that as well, we are doing a research study that we run every couple of years, and we'd be very grateful for those of you joining us if you could fill that in. There is a scan, you can scan to bring up the survey, but we can also send you the details of that afterwards, and we will share the results of that survey then next year when it's completed. So we would be really grateful for everybody who could join in on that. But really, it just leaves me to say, Kath, thank you so much. I could talk to you all day long. I'm a huge fan of all the work that you're doing and all how you continue to drive through with all the challenges and all of the things, the fact that you're not just doing one project, you're doing many, and it's no easy feat. So thank you very much, especially for taking time out when you're Go Live Week. It's really, really appreciated.
You're very welcome. It's a pleasure to be here. And thank you for all your help.
Thank you very much. And thank you, everybody, for joining us. And hopefully we'll see you again on another session soon. Thank you.